Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and yes, it is that time again, as we have a brand new line of Zuru Dino Strike figures out. Another one we have had, I think this might be like the third or fourth potentially line of these figures, and I always get so psyched when they release new ones because I really love the Dino Strike figures. I think they're probably one of my favorite things that, release out there as far as like stuff you find in store of like big time stores like Target, Walmart, stuff like that. I always get so psyched when I see new Dino Strike figures, but one little slight downside to these ones is it doesn't seem like they've actually created any new figures. They've just piled on repaints. So it's a little bit disheartening, I guess, as far as that goes, because I like when they introduce new species into the lines. But again, it seems as though this time we're just basically left with repaints. And to show you exactly who, well, first of all, is included here, but you can see that these are called the Volcano Dino Strike. So we have Volcano Dino Strike figures this time around. And you can see what we have with this round of figures. We have a Dilophosaurus, a Stegosaurus, and a Tyrannosaurus Rex. But to show you who is in the line overall, I hope at least that yes. Okay, so they usually have like a little booklet here that shows you what different figures are included. So you can see that we've got ourselves a Dilophosaurus, which we have here, a T-Rex, which oddly enough looks not to be the same T-Rex. So I guess it is, but in the promotional image, it's actually a different color. It's more of like a brown with yellow on the back. In hand, it's actually black with yellow on the back. And then we also have two vehicles. We have a Stegosaurus, which is one that we have here to look at as well. And then if we turn it around, we've also got ourselves a new, well, it says Brontosaurus, but it's actually a Brachiosaurus, or at least the sculpt appears to be a Brachiosaurus. We have a new version of the Amargasaurus, which I think looks way nicer than the last version. We also have what they term as a Pterosaur, but looks to me like a Tapejara of some kind. Another vehicle, which is a rare one, a Volcano Wrangler, and then we also have a rare version of the T-Rex, and I would really like to get a hold of that Tyrannosaurus right there because that's a pretty cool looking one. But as far as what we have again this time around, we have these three here. I haven't acquired any more, but I'll probably head to my local Target at some point in the near future and try to grab the others, probably sooner rather than later because that's the way I work. But we have capture gear again for our figures, which is really cool because I love when they include the capture gear. I'm always a big fan of that because I feel like it just has that great Kenner feel, and that's never a bad thing. Nostalgia through the roof as far as that goes. And of course, you can see the Dilophosaurus sports the Jurassic Park style look as we have a frill for our Dilophosaurus, so that as well kind of has that Kenner throwback feel. Of course, the dinosaurs themselves, though, don't really look like anything Kenner would have produced. But anyway, I'm really psyched about these, so let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look right now. So all of the figures are actually just straight up repaints. They're the exact same sculpts that we had in the previous line. So you can see we have some pretty cool capture gear. It's painted with a gold this time rather than a silver like I believe it was last time. And since we have reviewed these figures in the past, we don't really need to go over the sculpts or anything again. We basically just need to take a look at what's different between these and the previous ones, and that would be the paint applications. So as far as what you see here on the face, you can see that the primary body is a grayish tone of color, and then we have a lot of red used. So you can see that the face has a nice gray. We've got a green eye with actually a red pupil. I almost said a black pupil because I'm just so used to everything having a black pupil. But you can definitely see we have a red pupil. You can also see we have red up there on the crest of our Dilophosaurus. You have a nice creamy color here for the lower jaw, and that does run along the entire underside of the dinosaur almost until we reach out here onto the tail. But Mattel, take note to this because not only do we actually have paint that runs the entire way out on the underside, we have painted nails and we have paint that runs along the back. So this is proof that Mattel, you guys can add more paint to your figures, and there's absolutely no reason not to. They just need to stop trying to save a few dollars, I guess. If we open the mouth, you can see the inside of the mouth actually sports a really cool purple tongue. I really like that as well. And then we have some paint for the teeth. They are painted with a white, and they seem to be painted pretty nicely. There's no real sloppiness or anything that I can see. A little extra like plastic or something hanging off the side of the jaw there, but there's definitely some nice paintwork on the inside of the mouth. Again, same style of paint over here. You can even see that there's also like a darker gray that kind of borders around the eye slightly as well to just give it a little bit of extra paint variation. As far as the frill goes, you can see that again we have some grays that transition really smoothly to reds as we get closer to the edges of the frill, and I think it looks pretty nice, pretty natural overall. We do again have painted nails with a black, and the body continues to have that nice strong dose of that gray, but you also have the red running down the back of the neck that also runs down along the entire body of the dinosaur, leading out here into the tail until we get pretty close to the tip, and then it tapers off. You can also see that just like with the previous line, we have injuries, but oddly enough, they're kind of painted with like a very, very dark purplish tone of color. So I don't really know if they're insinuating that those are more like scars or if they're supposed to be open wounds. It's not all that clear to me. But you can see we have an injury there in the stomach region, we have an injury on the thigh, and we also have an injury out here on the tail. And again, you can see the nails are painted. Let's see if we actually have dew claws. Oh, we don't even have dew claws at all. So we don't have dew claw paint for one thing, but we also don't have dew claws, which I don't remember that being the case on the Dilophosaurus last time, but obviously must have because this is the exact same sculpt. But you can see on the opposing side, again, we have an injury out here on the tail and then again on the thigh. So I really like the sculpt of the Dilophosaurus, even though apparently it's missing a dew claw, and it's obviously highly inaccurate. It's still a really cool kind of a JP style Dilophosaurus, and this paint scheme is yet another pretty nice looking version of the figure. Then we have the Stegosaurus, and you can see the Stegosaurus again has gold here for the capture gear, and it's pretty nice looking. Again, just kind of capture gear going over the head of the Stegosaurus. Yet again, we have reviewed this figure, and this one really has like a bright look. So we're only, again, going to take a look at the paint application because that's the only thing that's different about this one compared to the previous release. But this one I'm not a big fan of as far as the coloration goes. Although I totally get why they would have done this, because with this being a Volcano line of Dino Strike, it kind of has like that volcanic look as far as like, you know, actually having kind of like a translucency to the plates up here in the back, which is pretty cool, but it has that almost lava-like look, sort of, so I kind of understand why they would have given it this coloration. I'm just not a big fan of it because I don't feel like it looks natural as far as what a dinosaur would look like, but you can see that as far as the coloration that we have here for the face, we have a green eye yet again, and we again have a red pupil, so following that volcanic trend. You can also see that we have a brown for the beak. The entire dinosaur, just like actually with the Dilophosaurus, has kind of a glossy look, which I also don't really like too much. But you can see that we have a nice white here for the lower jaw that runs down along the underside of the Stegosaurus. And yes, again, all the way out through the course of the underside. So Mattel, please keep taking note. And then if we look up here on the back, you can again see that the plates have that orangish tone, but as far as the first dose of plates, actually the majority of the plates, we all have that kind of translucent look where you can actually see through them. You can see my finger through the other side there, which I think looks pretty neat. Once we get here a little further back, the final four plates do not have that translucent look and actually have more of a reddish tone of color, more so than an orange, or like a red-orange, I should say. You have again a nice yellowish coloration for the majority of the body, and you have more injuries again painted with that dark purple. You can see one there in the neck, one in the leg. You also have one up here near the shoulder, and then one out here on the tail. The Thagomizers also have paint, as we have kind of a yellowish tone, like a light yellow for the Thagomizers of the Stegosaurus. And then again over here you can see more injuries. We actually have a ton, as we have one here in the neck, one running down from the shoulder into the upper part of the front leg. We also have one up here in the upper part of the back, actually two right there. And we have another one in the thigh and then another one out here on the tail. So there's a lot of injuries to be found on the Stegosaurus. But even though the coloration definitely is not my first choice, it's still actually pretty nicely applied. Like, it's all very precise looking. You also have painted nails, which again is always a huge plus. And you can see like the eye paint is not sloppy, the beak paint isn't sloppy, nothing as far as the paintwork looks sloppy. So although it's not my, again, first choice as far as coloration for a Stegosaurus goes, being the Volcano line, I understand why they gave it this coloration, and it all is pretty nicely applied overall. And then the final one, and definitely my favorite of the bunch, we have the Tyrannosaurus. So again, gold capture gear that you can see. It looks exactly the same, but just gold this time as opposed to silver. And then as far as the coloration goes, you can see that we again have green eyes. with a red pupil. I really wish they would have used a black pupil for it because I feel like the red pupil just doesn't look very good, but it is what it is. You can see as far as the coloration goes, we have a very nice dark black color for the majority of the body, but we have a nice yellow that runs along the upper side, and some areas you can kind of see like a green creeping through the yellow, which is pretty cool to almost see a little color variation included there. And then again, the inside of the mouth, you can see that we have a nice purple tongue, just like we saw on the Dilophosaurus, which I really do quite like that tone of purple they've used for the tongue. And you can again see that the teeth are painted pretty nicely. What I really like about this Rex is it's just a really big, bulky, like intimidating looking Tyrannosaurus. I really, really like this, and I think if we saw a Tyrannosaurus that was big and bulky like this out somewhere again, you would be terrified, absolutely terrified seeing something like that walking toward you. And I definitely like the bulkiness of the figure. Again, you can see that we do have nail paint both on the fingers as well as on the toes, painted with a white. You can also see that we have kind of like a tan for the lower jaw, which is nice to see that alternate coloration. And you can see that coloration transitions from that tan to more of a white, but it also kind of has a mixture of the tan, so it's actually pretty neat looking. As you can see, as we move up here, it kind of looks like it has a white that transitions to the side, but here in the middle of the underside, it kind of has like a similar tone of tan to what we see there, almost like a peach. And then you can see that also runs throughout the entire course of the underside of the Tyrannosaurus. This time we actually have wounds that almost have reddish paint, but it's actually more of like an orange, again, sort of giving off that volcanic vibe. You can see we have one up there near the shoulder. We have quite a few running down the course of the leg, and then one back here in the tail. We do not, again, have dew claws. I don't know why I never realized this, but Zuru apparently really hates dew claws. This one doesn't have them either, but you can again see over here we have another wound here on the thigh. I think that's about it. It looks like we had wounds sculpted out here in the stomach region, but they're not actually given any paint or anything. But again, a really cool Tyrannosaurus. I absolutely love this figure, and now that there's a really rare version of it out, I really want to get a hold of that one as well. So definitely a very fun addition to the Dino Strike line, and I feel like this Rex looks way better than the last one. Now, as usual, the figures do have some articulation, and you can see that we have articulation in the jaw for the Rex, but what's really, what's a little upsetting about the Rex is the jaw is super loose, so you can see it just consistently falls down. You can get it to close sometimes, but it doesn't work perfectly. We do have articulation in the arms, though there isn't much mobility there. You can see it does move, but you can't really do too much with it. We also have articulation in the legs, which that works pretty well. It's pretty smooth. And then articulation in the tail, but that activates the action feature. And you can see that the jaw snaps. And of course, this is why the jaw is loose, but I really would like the ability to close the mouth on the Rex. I just feel like it looks cooler with the mouth closed than hanging open. But again, once you push the tail down, it activates that snapping feature, which looks pretty smooth as well. And then for the Dilophosaurus, you can see this looks better because I feel like with the mouth closed, now we can push the tail down and it opens the mouth to snap. So that's how the action feature works on the Dilophosaurus. Of course, it's pretty similar as far as the articulation goes, except with the Rex, you have articulation in the neck when it, activates the action feature. The Dilophosaurus does not. It only has articulation. I'm going to turn it this way. It's a little easier to control. It only has articulation in the jaw, so the neck doesn't actually move, just the jaw. But we do, again, have articulation in the arms, which you can definitely get more mobility out of on this side, and then in the legs, and then, of course, the tail, because that activates the snapping feature. And then for the Stegosaurus, you have articulation in the neck and the tail, but that's kind of like the action feature. And then as far as the rest of the body goes, we have articulation in the legs, but it's really not too much. Like, you don't have much mobility at all as far as the legs go. A little bit better on this side, but again, you have the articulation in the tail because once you move the tail, it turns the head. And you can see how we can basically have like a head smacking feature, or of course what you would want for a Stegosaurus would be the tail strike by pushing the neck over. It doesn't work great, but it definitely works good enough. The Stegosaurus, of course, being quadrupedal, stands perfectly. The Rex also actually stands pretty nicely once you get the feet in position. There we go. You can see the Rex stands really nicely. The Dilophosaurus does. You can see it stands, but there are often times where it falls over on me and doesn't have the best balance, but at the same time, it's also not the worst. As far as a size goes for the Tyrannosaurus, you are looking at about, lengthwise, almost 6 inches or around the 14. I'd say actually about 5 3/4 inches in length for the Rex, or about 14.5 centimeters. The highest point, I don't know if it's the tail or the neck there. You're looking at about 2.5 inches or around 6.5 centimeters for a height on the Rex. For the Dilophosaurus, who's now going to do what I was just saying and fall over, for a length, you were looking at about the 5 3/8, somewhere in that vicinity, or around the 13.5 centimeter area. And then for a height, about 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters right there to the top of the frill. And then for the Stegosaurus, you were looking at about the 5 3/4 inch range, or around 14.5 centimeters. And then the highest point would probably be the plates right here, about 3 inches or a little under. Actually, I'd say a little over 7.5 centimeters. So actually, this is a little higher. So we're a little over 3 inches or about 8 centimeters to the tip of the tail. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Dino Strike figures. And just like last time, they are the exact same sculpts, which means they are the exact same size. You can see there is no difference in size between these and the previous ones. And this also shows you that they are a little bit smaller than an average Attack Pack figure. But for another size comparison, there is a Takara Tomy Tyrannosaurus Rex. Now you can see that they are very similar in size, or at least the Rex is, to a Takara Tomy Rex, just obviously with more body mass than the Takara Tomy version. And then we also have a Collect Day Standard Dino Kairos here, again helping to show off the size of these figures, as well as the Collect Day Dimetrodon we'll bring in here and kind of get in the way for a moment. So if you happen to have never owned any of these Dino Strike figures in the past, hopefully these guys all here in comparison will help to give you a rough idea of the fact that they are fairly small, but at the same time, they're not super small. I would say small approaching a medium size range. So this brand new Zuru Toys Dino Strike Volcano edition seems pretty fun, but it's not quite as exciting as previous lines. Because first of all, I'm not a huge fan of these weird red pupils we're using on the new line. Don't like those at all. I would still prefer black pupils. And yeah, I get that they're trying to kind of go along with the theme of Volcano, but I still would like black pupils over the red pupils. The colorations of them also look pretty nice on some, not so great on others. I think the Rex looks fantastic. It's definitely the best version of the Tyrannosaurus that we have had, at least as far as this sculpt goes. And I feel like the coloration looks pretty nice and natural overall, so I really, really like the Tyrannosaurus. I don't know if it'll still remain the best if I ever find the rare version, but I still really quite like this particular Rex right here. We also have the Stegosaurus, which I don't like the paint job of. I'm not a big fan of the bright coloration for the body. I also don't really like the fact that it has a glossy appearance to it. That's also something I'm not a huge fan of. And although I think the sculpt is fun, you know, it's pretty much your standard Zuru Toys sculpt. They always have kind of off-the-wall, exaggerated versions of dinosaurs. And I feel like that fits the scheme of things as far as the Zuru Toys line goes, but the coloration still isn't really that great on the Stegosaurus. Still fitting the Volcano theme, but just not really that great as far as I'm concerned. And then we have the Dilophosaurus, which the Dilophosaurus definitely looks cool. I think the coloration is nice and natural looking on it. It does have a bit of a glossy look to it as well, which I don't like, but I feel like I could still get past it because the tones of color used are still pretty nice and definitely look, again, like the coloration that you could potentially see on a real Dilophosaurus, even though the dinosaur is far from an accurate Dilophosaurus. And then we, of course, have those, injuries and everything all throughout, which I really do quite like that aspect as well, because I feel like that's something that's just a fun little extra that they add in. We have a lot of paint application on these figures, far better than what you see as far as like a Mattel release goes, because we actually have painted nails. We have paint that runs all the way out onto the tail. They don't skimp out, it seems, as far as paint application goes. Even though they're not the greatest paint schemes, they at least do apply a decent bit of paint, and paint that covers the entire body, whereas Mattel likes to just kind of cut the paint off halfway through and give up. And then on top of all of that, you have some pretty fun capture gear. Nothing amazing, but kind of like your standard Zuru Toys capture gear goes. All of these basically just have headgear. That's about it for this wave of Dino Strike figures as far as these three go. The other ones I know, like the Amargasaurus, definitely has like a ball and chain type gimmick, and I believe the Pterosaur has leg restraints. I think the Brachiosaurus, even though it's said to be a Brontosaurus, but I think the Brachiosaurus as well has like some sort of a ball and chain or something along those lines. So somehow I was able to get a hold of all of the ones that have the head capture gear first, which is weird. But regardless, again, it's a pretty fun line, not as exciting as previous lines from the Zuru Toys Dino Strike series, but still alright. So if you are interested in these, make sure you run to your local Target, as that's where I found mine. Find yourself that random stand of Dino Strike figures, and start buying some of those random Dino Strike surprise ball, egg things, whatever you want to call them, and hope for the best, because you just really have no idea what you're going to get. I got super lucky by just getting 3 of them and getting different dinosaurs in every one of them. Hopefully that luck will continue when I head back and try to acquire some more. But again, make sure you check your local Target, pick some of these up if you are interested, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.